Hi, my name is Quinn. This is Open Awareness Yoga, and today we are working on breath of life. So this is a nice name for a class that's all focused on the lungs, and we'll be working through a relationship to the three diaphragms we have in our body, the pelvic floor, the thoracic diaphragm, and one that you have in your throat, as well as just keeping in touch with the lungs being the leader of this practice, okay? So you need some props for today, more than normal. You can kind of do without some of them, but a strap, yeah, or a tie, your 2 yoga blocks or 2 books, a blanket or a bath towel, and then the additional prop that we sometimes use is, this is a bolster, it's a yoga bolster, it's an official one. I can give you a recommendation if you're like finally ready to purchase one. You could also use like the back of your couch. If what you have doesn't work, there will be options to not use this, okay? But it'll be nice for breathing. And we're just gonna get started now. Make sure either your bolster or your folded up blanket, like in a wad, is nearby, and your strap, because we'll be grabbing those in a second. And lay down on your back, bend your knees, feet on the floor. It's kind of normal for us by now, isn't it? And get yourself comfortable, get out all the little wiggle worms. If it's more comfortable for you to knock your knees in towards center, you're welcome to do that. And let's bring the hands to the low ribs. And touch your middle fingers together, just the very tips of your middle fingers, right in that A frame underneath your sternum, in the soft tissue there, so that your hands, the palms of your hands are very lightly placed over the low ribs. And then tune into your breath, breathing in and out through the nose, and feel the movement underneath your hands. Many of you might know this already. The first thing I want to point out to you in this class for breathing is the location of your diaphragm, your thoracic diaphragm. It's underneath your hands. And it basically cuts you in half from top to bottom, like a magician would do to somebody in a box, separating the upper cavity of the ribs with the heart and the lungs from the lower cavity of the abdomen with the digestive organs and organs of reproduction. And you'll notice as you inhale, the rib cage seems to expand up and down, as well as side to side. And as you exhale, everything draws back towards the center, and the ribs soften down. What's happening as you inhale is this thoracic diaphragm is contracting and drawing down in the direction of the pelvic floor, creating a vacuum in your ribs, and the lungs suck in air. As you exhale, the diaphragm, the thoracic diaphragm, relaxes, lifting back up towards your heart and pressing the air out of your lungs. And this is the primary muscle of respiration. We mostly breathe using this muscle, and you've probably heard of diaphragmatic breath. It's how to get a nice deep breath. But now bring your hands down to your low belly, so that maybe you feel the heels of your hands on your 2 front hip points and the fingertips down towards your pubic bone. See if you can feel your breath moving your belly. Some people feel this automatically, other people don't feel much here. And we're moving our awareness down now towards the pelvic floor, which is your pelvic diaphragm. It's a sling of muscles connecting between your 2 sitting bones, your pubic bone and your tailbone. That creates the base of your torso. And as we often do, we'll move through some pelvic tilts. So let's think about the tailbone as we tilt today. As you inhale, drop your tailbone down towards the ground, like it's a drawbridge opening over a moat. Your low back will lift off the floor even more. As you exhale, feel your belly caving down and in towards your spine as your spine flattens in the earth and the tailbone lifts. So continue this movement with your own breath, making it easy and just noticing the quality of the movement. Maybe it feels rickety and jaggedy. Maybe you feel asymmetrical from right to left. Maybe there's a smoothness, a circular feeling to this pelvic tilting, also called arch and flatten. And I want you to add some sophistication into your awareness here. As you drop the tailbone down on inhale, can you feel the muscles of the pelvic floor relaxing or stretching? And as you exhale, can you feel the muscles of the pelvis floor in their natural contraction here? And especially if you've never paid attention to this area before, you might be like, I can't really feel anything, and that's okay. It's normal when there's a new part of the body that we're working with, especially one that's sensitive like the pelvic floor. As you continue your arch and flattens, I just want to point out that your hamstrings attach into the sitting bones along with the pelvic floor, and your groins, the adductors, upper inner thighs, they also attach in towards the pubic bone and the sitting bone along the pelvis. So tension in your hamstrings and in your groins can really affect the movement of your pelvic floor and therefore affect how deep you're able to take a breath. So let's go ahead and open up those areas, moving into something that might feel a little bit more like traditional yoga. So come to stillness, find your strap, and start with the left foot, just simply because that's the leg I can move without a wall next to me. And then grab your blanket or your bolster and scoot it in towards your outer left hip. Okay, we'll be using that in a minute. Here, lengthen the left leg up into the sky. Soften your shoulders, let your elbows relax down to the ground if you have this space. And if you're like, oh boy, I'm tight today, then bend and straighten your knee. No need to like put the hamstrings into any sort of, fear reaction here. Okay, and just notice what's going on at your low back, especially the low left back. Is it in arch or is it in flatten? Then if you'd like to, you might straighten the right leg down along the mat and release it to the floor. Take some deep breaths and notice where you feel your breath traveling in your body. So we allow the movement of the breath as we open up through our muscles. Now hold both of the straps in your left hand. Externally rotate the left thigh at the hip socket and then open the leg to the left. And you'll find that your thigh bone rests on top of the support underneath it. Now if you need some more height underneath your leg, then stuff something else underneath there. You've got 2 books, maybe you have something nearby, but it's really nice to have that extra support so there's not so much work in opening up here. And we're getting into the adductors, the groins, and you might also feel a nice opening across the pelvis from the left hip point to the right hip point. And maybe you even drop your breath deep into the belly and stretch that area a little on an inhale. Relax everything as you exhale. And giving our pelvis a little bit of help to find more freedom of movement in those pelvic tilts. And truly, as we breathe, the functional way our body moves, I don't want to say that it's the normal way because for many people it isn't. As we breathe, the pelvis rocks a little bit back and forth because of the movement of these diaphragms. And there's truly movement in the body of the breath. So inhale to bring your left leg back up and release. Bend both of your knees and you'll change sides. So place your blanket along the outer right hip and then place the strap onto the right foot and find your experience here. So whether that's a static hold, opening up through your hamstrings, or flexing and straightening at your knee. It's whatever you need, whatever feels right for you. And remember too, you have the option of leaving your left knee bent or straightening it down along the floor. You'll have to excuse me. I feel like I have a sneeze that's going to come out. So if that happens, please don't be startled. Again, on this side, notice your low back. Is it rounding? Is it arching? Maybe you play around a little bit. And soften your shoulders. Let's turn the right leg out and then open it to the right. So you're holding both of the straps in the right hand now. Hopefully finding some support underneath that right thigh. And if you haven't already, slide the left leg long. And continue breathing deep, noticing how it feels to open your right groins and across the front of the pelvis. Maybe even exaggerating an inhale breath to feel a little bit more stretch in that low belly. Relaxing more with every exhale. On an inhale breath, bring the right leg back up, bend both knees, feet on the floor. And here, if you're using a bolster or you're using a firm pillow or something, you'll come to sit up. If you don't have one, you don't want to use it, you'll just come straight into Badakanasana. So soles of the feet together, knees wide. You might scoot your hips towards your heels if your low back feels compressed. If you have the luxury of using a bolster, place it behind you. Take your blanket or your bath towel across the bolster. It'll be a pillow for your head and your neck. And then place your low back right against the edge of the pillow you're using and lay down backwards over it. And then adjust so that you feel comfortable. And then now you'll do Badakanasana. Like presumably some of our compatriots here in yoga are already doing. If you have any pain in the knees, you might place your books or other cushions underneath your thighs. And here I'll give you the option to grab opposite elbows or opposite wrists and bring your arms overhead. So here what we're doing is making a lot of space between your thoracic diaphragm and your pelvic diaphragm, the pelvic floor. And another place that we hold tension as people is in our abdominals. So with the bolster especially, you're getting a nice stretch and lengthening in your rectus abdominis. That's the six-pack abs, which is the outermost layer of abdominals. And they're attached onto the top of the pubic bone so they can pull the pubic bone up, therefore tucking your tailbone under and again limiting that movement of your pelvis with the breath that you take. As you can probably feel, there's also some inner thigh stuff going on right now. And can you bring your mind back to your low ribs and tune into the thoracic diaphragm, paying attention as you inhale and it draws down, and exhale, releases and relaxes up. If your arms are overhead, change which forearm is on top and continue to focus on your thoracic diaphragm. And if ever your legs start to feel like too much, go ahead and come out. Otherwise, we'll be here for another 20 seconds or so. Stay with your breath. And the next thing we'll do will really wake us up to the lungs, so that they can begin to take a leadership role in initiating our entire practice. So bring the arms back down by the sides of the body, hands underneath thighs. Move your knees together and rest as long as you need to so that you don't feel like any danger signals before you move. If you're on a bolster, you'll very carefully roll to the side, coming off the bolster. Everybody roll to the side and sit yourself up. So here's another option. If you've got a bolster like me, I'll tell you what a fun thing you can do with it. If not, you'll just lay on your right side with your right arm underneath your head. If you've got the bolster, you'll place it across your mat and then fold up your blanket for a head pillow. And here's what happens. You slide your lower arm between the head pillow and the bolster pillow, and the bolster's underneath your ribs. Okay? So I'm going to practice this without the bolster. It's a nice treat if you have it, but not necessary. The rest of you, your bottom arm, the upper arm, is a pillow for your head. And then see about aligning the back of your head, your shoulders, and your hips. Then pull your knees right in front of the hips and the feet directly down from the knees. Okay? Nice. And just relax here on your side body for a moment. And place your top hand on the lower side ribs. So kind of as far down as you can get on the ribs. You'll notice the ribs start to cave in towards the waist. And as you breathe in, feel your lungs pressing up into your hands. Just take 2 or 3 breaths with their focus concentrated on this area of the lungs. And the lungs are what is pressing into your hands as you inhale. As the lungs empty, your hands fall down towards the floor. So now move your hands up so that they're right underneath the armpit. And this might not be comfortable for everybody's shoulder to touch. And if not, that's okay. Place your top arm wherever it's comfortable. And bring your mind to the ribs right underneath the armpit. And feel your lungs expanding here, pressing up into your hand. You can even press down with your hand to resist the lung a little bit, to really feel that connection. And once you're done with 2 breaths there in your exploration, bring your hand to the top chest. I'm not going to place mine down on my chest because that's where the microphone is, but your fingertips will be right above your collarbone and your hands will just be resting on the top chest ribs. And feel your top lungs expanding and pressing into your hands here. I didn't tell you which side to have on top first. My left side is on top, and it's your left lung that is 2 lobes because the heart sits on the left. If your right lung is what's on top, your right lung is bigger. It has 3 lobes. Either way, it is as big as what we're exploring here. Very large. Okay, now let's bring the top hand underneath your head. So it's kind of tucking down by the bottom ear. And then you can fold your elbow towards the front, so in the same direction as your nose, so your shoulder feels comfortable. And now here, as you breathe, expand into your top lung, feeling the ribs separate deeply on inhale. And everything softens and relaxes towards the floor on exhale. So just 2 more breaths like this, paying attention just to your top lung. Breathing into the backside body as well. Now release that top arm. If you're laying on the bolster, you'll come off of it for a moment. Everybody roll onto your back. Just as we began, with the feet on the floor and the palms face up. Continue to breathe, noticing your lungs. And notice any difference between the side that you just worked with and the other side. Maybe it's easier to breathe, or it feels like that side is relaxed and more spacious than the other. Okay, now we're coming to the other side. So you can just flip over. If you're using the bolster, place it back where you need it. Remember, you rest your head on your lower arm. And then tuck your knees in front of your hips. And let's start with the top hands on those lower ribs, right above the waist, and take 2 breaths. Lungs lifting into the ribs, into your hand. Kind of a better idea of what we're doing now, so it might be easier to drop into your experience. You don't need so much guidance from me. Next hand position is underneath the armpit on the upper side ribs. Again, you can just use your mind here. Breathing into the lungs, feeling the lungs lift into the hand. And final position. Fingertips are right above the collarbone. Heel of the hand is down towards the breast. And breathe into these upper lungs. So the very tips of the lungs actually peak right above the collarbones. And I'll repeat, that right side has 3 lobes and is a little bit bigger than the left side because the left side makes space for your heart. And the last thing here on this side, you tuck your top hand underneath your opposite ear. Tuck your elbow a little bit forward for shoulder comfort. And then breathe into the entire top lung, expanding the ribs away from one another on inhale and letting everything relax fully on exhale. Okay, and then now you'll come to lie on your back just one more time. And get that somatic or felt sense of the effects of what you just did. Maybe it's a little bit easier to breathe. Yes, and let's roll onto one side and come up to seated. So I promise we are going to eventually stand up, but we have a few seated poses to do first. First is a seated Badakanasana, so with the soles of the feet together and the knees wide. Now, if you're really rounding in the spine, then I want you to sit up on either a block or your 2 books or maybe your bolster, just something to get your hips lifted a little higher. Bring your fingertips behind you. Roll the shoulders back and press down into the fingertips to help lift your lungs. And breathe. Press the feet together, release the knees down towards the ground. Soften your shoulders. Maybe close your eyes and see if you can feel a tiny rocking of your pelvis. All right, you're welcome to stay right here. If you still have your books or a block handy, we can deepen this stretch by placing them long ways between the feet. And then come back in to the Badakanasana. And this is pretty intense for me, so I'm going to turn the blocks a quarter turn so that my feet aren't held too far apart. Remember, fingertips behind you helps lengthen your spine. And take at least one full breath cycle where you're paying attention to the expansion in your lungs. Okay. Bring the books out from between your legs. Bring your knees back up to the ceiling. And we have one more seated pose here, Upavista Konasana. So you'll open the legs in a straddle. This isn't like a deep cheerleader straddle. They're like a little bit over 90 degrees here. Fingertips behind you. Lift up the heart. And as best you can, let your thigh bones release down to the ground. Tune back into your breath. Inhabit your body, inhabit your lungs. Soften on exhale. Hands come underneath your knees. Bend your knees, walk your feet together. And now we'll come to standing. So we'll start moving, and we'll move from the lungs. in just a moment. Okay, so stand at Tadasana, the top of your mat, feet hips width distance apart. Bring your arms down by the sides of the body. Maybe close the eyes and take a breath. Now bring the arms slightly forward and inhale. We'll start to roll down. As you exhale, tuck your chin into your chest. Let the arms drape forward. Bend your knees and slowly roll down the spine, vertebra by vertebra. When you reach the bottom, press down into your feet and feel a lifting start from the feet as you begin to roll back up through the spine. That energy moves past the knees, the pelvis, pelvic floor, into your thoracic diaphragm, into the lungs, and up past the throat to the crown of the head. Take a breath in at the top, and as you exhale, go right back down. Let the arms drape and the knees bent. Let this movement feel juicy and good in your body. Hang at the bottom for a moment, shake the head no, traction the spine with the heavy head. And now feel your weight in your feet and press down. Let that energy move up your body as you come to straighten. Rolling up, knees, pelvis, pelvic floor, thoracic diaphragm, lungs, throat, and head. Okay, we're going to add on to this next one. Inhale. Exhale, chin to chest, roll it down. If you get down before me, just relax. Wait. Okay, I'm going to tell you what we're doing and then we'll do it together. We're going to roll up like normal, but this time, when that energy gets to your lungs, let your lungs lift your arms. Okay, it takes patience to let the lungs do that moving for us. So let's try one round together. Press down through your feet. Begin to roll up. Feel the energy move past your knees, your pelvis, through your pelvic floor. At your thoracic diaphragm, it lifts into the ribs. Your lungs fill with air. You're breathing in and the arms lift overhead. Palms come to touch. And as you exhale, you bring your hands past your face and into prayer at your heart. Inhale here one more time. As you exhale, chin comes to chest, rounding down. You can let the palms release from each other, moving through the spine. And rolling back up one more time in your own pace. It's your inhale breath that fills the lungs, and the lungs are what initiate the arms floating up and overhead. They come to touch, and you pull prayer hands past your face and into your heart. Inhale here. Exhale, round down. Feel the lungs empty, helping your upper back round down. We're changing it here. Plant your hands and step your left leg back long. And then step off of your right foot to come into downward facing dog. Take a deep breath in here. As you exhale, bring your left foot forward between your hands. Spring off your right foot to bring the right foot forward and fold. Press down into the feet to roll up. Your inhale breath fills your lungs, and your lungs lift your arms overhead. Palms come to touch, and you bring the hands to the heart. Inhale. Exhale, roll down. Plant your hands. This time step the right leg back. Step the left leg back, downward dog. And breathe in. Breathe out. Step the right leg forward. Spring off your left toes. Step the left leg forward. Use an inhale breath to press down through your feet and come up to stand, floating your arms from the lungs. And bring your hands to your heart. Release your hands down by the side of the body. Bend the knees slightly and tune into your pelvic floor. You might even rock the hips back and forth as you do in the pelvic tilts. Think about your tailbone opening like a drawbridge, which is like kind of confusing metaphor here. And tucking under and find a place that's comfortable. And then bring your mind to your thoracic diaphragm. You might even bring your hands to your low ribs if that helps you. And can you line up your thoracic diaphragm right on top of the pelvic diaphragm? So it's like we're stacking trampolines right on top of one another. And this is just a feeling thing. You know, feel in your body that it's lined up, one on top of the other. And then we'll add in our third diaphragm, the vocal diaphragm, which is in your throat. So if you imagine that there's a sling of muscles in your throat, it's a little more complicated than that. Line up that throat, vocal diaphragm right above the thoracic diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm. Inhale. Exhale, roll down. When you get there, one leg at a time, step back into downward dog. In your downward dog, see if you can line up those three diaphragms once more. Bend the knees for freedom in your pelvis. Just let yourself explore this and feel it out. Continue to breathe. And step one leg between the hands. Spring off the back foot to step the other forward. And inhale to come all the way up. The lungs and the arms overhead. And release the palms to the chest. Okay, take a big step. Open your legs. Stand wide on your mat. And we'll do warrior two. So this time we'll start with the right leg turned out, left leg angled in. Bend into the right knee. Doesn't have to be your deepest warrior two. Then hang your arms down by the sides of your hips. And be true to yourself. Like your hips probably aren't with both of your arms right between the legs. For me, my torso is actually kind of rotated towards that right knee. And so my right hand is hanging behind the right leg. And that's okay. So now here from your warrior two, see about lining up your three diaphragms. Pelvic floor, thoracic diaphragm, and throat. When you play around with that a little bit, finding freedom in your spine, then tune into the breath. And as your inhale fills your lungs, lift your arms up, out to a T. And as your exhale empties your lungs, bring the arms back down. So try to let this be from the lungs. The lungs are what are leading the lift and the float of the arms. Like the lungs are buoys in the ocean, and they float the arms up and down. One more time. And straighten the right leg and come to the second side. Angle the right toes in, turn the left leg out, bend the left knee, then hang your arms down by the side hips. Line up those three diaphragms. Just play around with it. You don't have to get it right. Once you feel like you're in a place you'd like to be, tune into the breath and don't rush this. Don't let it be mechanical. Be patient and really feel that when the lungs blow up enough, they create buoyancy in the arms and the arms lift to a T. And then don't let the chest collapse as the lungs empty and the arms float down by the side body, which does require some muscular effort in your spine. Last one. Now straighten that left leg and come to standing back at the front of your mat. Okay. Here we'll be taking an Katasana, that's chair pose. Feet other hips width distance, or you can zip your feet together, squeeze your knees together. If your feet are hips width distance, keep the knees in line with the center of the foot so they don't knock in towards one another. Now just from Tadasana to start, line up those three diaphragms that you've been working with. As you inhale and the inhale gets to the lungs, let the lungs lift the arms overhead. Exhale, sink your hips, paying attention to keep those 3 diaphragms still in conversation. So it's kind of like in the downward facing dog, we're in a different orientation to gravity. So what does it feel like here to have an alignment in the pelvic diaphragm, thoracic diaphragm, and throat? You might even gently bounce on the breath, feeling what's going on deep in your hip sockets. Fill the lungs and empty the lungs. And on an inhale, let the lungs lift the legs straight. Release the hands to the heart. Warrior 1. Step the left leg back long and bring the left heel down to the ground towards the center of the mat. Keep a gentle bend in your right knee. Hang the arms down by the sides of the body. Now here, play around again with lining up those 3 diaphragms. You don't have to be perfect, and you can notice what stretches as you reorient your own body in space. And when you're ready, catch the inhale in the lungs to lift the arms overhead. 2 more breaths. Feel the ribs expand. And on your 3rd inhale, shift your weight into your right leg. Step the left leg forward and release your hands to your heart. 2nd side, step the right leg back. Right heel grounded as best you can. Bend into the left knee. Hang the arms. Play with those 3 diaphragms. When you feel ready, a deep inhale, and the lungs lift your arms. You'll notice the feel of today's class is different from some classes where I give you a lot of cues and tell you how to move your bones. And you might find you have a preference. And you might find you get something completely different out of these different practices. And some days are better for some methods. All right, shift your weight into your left foot. Gracefully step your right foot forward to meet it. And exhale, bring your palms to touch down in front of the heart. Just turn back to this side. Big step wide. We're coming into a fold here. So if you need books or blocks in your hands, grab them. And everybody, hinge at your hips and bring your fingertips underneath your shoulders. Okay? So here, breathe and feel the lungs fill with air, drawing your rib cage away from the top waist. Breathe out and ground down through your feet. Reach your inner thighs away from one another. Again, we're opening the hamstrings. One more deep breath in, fill the lungs. And as the lungs empty, let your back round down. Walk your hands back if you have space. Let the head hang here and press the Badakanasana. Now notice if your shoulders are up by your ears, scrunched up. Lift them away from the ears, which is away from the floor. But do let your upper back round here and feel your breath as best you can in your backside body. So feel your back ribs expanding away from the spine as you inhale. And it might be easier in this position to feel what's happening at your pelvic floor as you breathe. So check in there for the next breath or two. And when you're ready, come back to the starting position here, hands underneath shoulders, and the hands can be on the books. Inhale, fill the lungs and lengthen the spine. Exhale, stay, long spine. And now bring your mind back into your right lung. And just as we began, we were laying on our side and we were feeling just one lung at a time. So with your focus on your right lung, as you inhale and the right lung fills up with air, float that right arm out to a T. And let the deflating lung bring the right hand back to where it started underneath you. The next time you inhale, make the movement a little bigger, not out of force, but from your lungs, and open your torso to the right. Exhale, let the lungs bring the arm back down. This time, you float the arm up even higher, and you stay as you exhale. Maybe if it feels right to you, your next inhale as the right lung fills up, you reach the palm overhead, bicep by the ear, and feel stretching through that right side body. And then let naturally your lung deflate and the arm come back down. You might need to take a few bends through your knees. Been here a while. And we'll do the second side. So now shift your awareness into the left lung. And as that lung fills with air, the left arm floats out to a T, long lifting arm. As the lung deflates, arm comes down. The lung will add a little bit more lift and a twist through the spine on the next one. And back down. And now we stay. Inflate into your twist. Maybe as the left lung inflates next, the arm reaches overhead. And naturally deflate and come back down. Bend your knees and toe heel your feet together, or your feet hips width distance apart. Let your head hang, and just as we did in the roll-ups, press down through your feet and roll up to standing. Maybe you choose to let your lungs lift your arms overhead and come to rest in front of your heart. We'll come down to our knees now for Parigasana gate pose. If you need some extra padding underneath your knees, you might place your blanket underneath there. Hands on your hips to start. Shoot your left leg out to the side. And for you, it's easier to have the toes up to the sky or the toes grounded. Kind of choose what feels right in your hips. You might get a little bit more input as to what feels right in my hips if I don't know what to look for. If you think about lining up those 3 diaphragms again, you might be starting to feel what are the forces that are pulling on them this way and that. And don't name those forces bad or wrong or needing any change in your body. That's not necessarily the case. Now here, feel the right lung and let that lift the right arm overhead. And then as you exhale, side bend to the left. Feeling the right lung, let it float the right arm. Stay side bent as you exhale. Just don't make your arm be like static, let it float with your breath. And the next inhale breath, the lungs, just float your torso back upright. Exhale, the right arm releases down. And then change sides. When you get there, line up those diaphragms as best you can. It doesn't have to happen. Then you'll inhale to float, left arm overhead. Exhale to side bend to the right. Filling the left lung now, letting the left shoulder move. Finding that natural rhythm. And see how moving from your lungs might change the quality of your practice. Now the left lung fills up with air. That's buoyancy that brings us back up to center. We release the left arm down and step the right leg underneath you. Come onto your belly. Hands will be by the side ribs, more or less underneath the elbows, forehead on the ground. We'll do 3 Cobra Poses with the lungs leading the way. Okay? So as you inhale, the lungs fill with air and they just float your torso off the ground. And as you exhale, the lungs empty, and that brings your torso back to the ground. Again. And on the next one, think about your 3 diaphragms being in conversation. Stay up. One thing that happens is sometimes we overextend the neck. So think, how would my neck need to be positioned for that vocal diaphragm to be in conversation with the thoracic diaphragm and the pelvic floor? And then lower all the way down. Now, interlace your fingers behind the small of your back or grab your strap and hold onto your strap behind your back. We'll do the same thing, just adding a little bit more opening through the shoulders. So pull the elbows together behind you, come back to your lungs, As your lungs fill with air, they float the torso up, and you might straighten the elbows and reach the arms behind you. As you exhale, the lungs bring you back down, elbows bend, breath. 2 more times. When you're done, rest completely. Place one of your cheeks on the ground. Bring your arms by the side body and let your shoulders round towards the floor. Next is Sphinx. Come up onto your elbows. Elbows underneath the shoulders, or walk a little bit in front of the shoulders for less back bend in your back. Now soften the top shoulders down. Come back to your lungs and really just pay attention to how the lungs fill and empty. And let your body do what comes natural to it. Let your lungs teach you something here. Just a few breaths. Does the buoyancy in your lungs make it feel like your ribs are lifting off of your waist? Lengthening the spine as it back bends. What happens to the spine as your lungs deflate? Maybe you feel a little more compression. Always, every breath you take, there's movement in the bones and the body. All day, every day, as long as you're alive. Now, you're welcome to stay here, or we might try upward facing dog. If you have any shoulder issues, you might choose to stay in Sphinx or even rest for now. If you're taking upward facing dog, you bring your palms a little further back than you have them for your Cobra Pose. Press the toenails and the tops of the feet down into the ground. Now as you inhale, let the lungs lift your chest. Press down into your hands, straighten your arms. You can leave the knees down on the ground for this one, or maybe you lift the knees off of the ground. Arms are super strong. Press down through the inner edges of the palms. Come back to your lungs and the conversation between your 3 diaphragms. Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, upward facing dog. We don't often do this one in this class. All right, bring the knees down to the ground if they aren't already, and no matter where you are, everybody push back into a child's pose with your knees together. And bring your hands behind you and let your shoulders and your back round. You might even bring the top of your head to the floor instead of your forehead. Breathe into the back lungs. Hands underneath shoulders, sit up. And we're sitting on our heels. Shift your hips over to the left, and then stack your right ankle in the left arch, preparing for Bharat Virjasana. The right buttocks will hang in the space between the left heel and the floor. Okay, twist to your left, right hand to the outer left knee, left fingertips at a comfortable distance behind you. And now think about that left lung filling and emptying. And as both lungs fill, the ribs are lifted off the waist. As you exhale and things soften, twist a little more at your navel, the soft tissue at the waist. And check in with your vocal diaphragm. Are you twisting it more than the other 2? If that's the case, bring them back into conversation. One more breath here, in and out. Now release to center, and we'll come to the second side. This time, feet are both on the left side of you. Left ankle in the arch of the right foot. Left sitting bone, buttocks is sort of floating. And you twist to the right. First, think about that right lung filling. And on the next breath, think about both of the lungs lifting your ribs off your waist. And as you exhale, you twist at the waist. All 3 diaphragms in conversation. I don't know about you, but I'm getting so many gurgles from my belly from this work. That's why we say yoga helps digestion, especially twisting. Release back to center. Bring the legs out in front of you. You probably know by now whether or not you need a lift underneath your buttocks from the beginning. Grab your strap if you need it for Paschimottanasana. So wrap it around the feet. And as you just sit upright, before you go anywhere, tune back into your lungs and the orientation of your 3 diaphragms. When you feel ready, exhale to come forward. Walk your hands all the way down the strap until your arms are straight. Maybe grab your feet. If you're quite flexible, you'll bend your elbows out to the side so you broaden across the upper back. Everybody release your shoulders away from your ears and breathe into the backside body. As you exhale, soften the belly back. No need to hold tension in the belly muscles. Just as we talked about in the beginning, they restrict movement in the ribs and in the pelvis. Any restricted movement can restrict our breath. Our breath is our life force. On it rides prana, our life force energy. And that is what heals us. And the breath can touch every part of the body. Every part of the body is soothed, is served as that flow of fresh oxygen and that release of toxin. Slowly, on an inhale, let your lungs guide your way back up. And we have a little bit of extra time for pranayama, or breathing practice. And I'd like for you, if you have a bolster pillow, to take a supported Shavasana. So grab your pillow or bolster, if it's comfortable. If you found you didn't like laying back on it, then skip it. If you don't have one, lay right back down on your back. Make sure you're comfortable, either knees bent or legs long, like in a regular Shavasana. And if you need something underneath your head, if that vocal diaphragm doesn't feel so good, how you feel laying on the floor, then place some support underneath your head. Here, bring your arms to the sides of the body. Roll the shoulders underneath you. And let the arms externally rotate so the palms face up. Adjust your hips so your low back feels comfortable. And again, you have the option, knees bent or legs long. Get yourself comfortable here. Remove glasses or scratch the itch. And tune back into your breath. Feeling the thoracic diaphragm as it drops on inhale and lifts on exhale. And here, if you are up on a bolster or some support, your lungs and ribs are lifted, they're supported. You can also feel a gentle and passive opening across your chest. You may notice that your breathing feels different, deeper, after the work you just put into your practice. And not only physical work, but mental work of concentration, patience, and focus. And relax your jaw and your tongue. Soften the front of your throat. And bring your awareness to your belly. Feel your breath low in your belly. Soft belly. Feel how the belly falls back towards the spine as you exhale. Without creating tension, maintain a little bit of that dropping back as you continue to breathe, and you'll feel more of your breath channeled into your ribs above the thoracic diaphragm. Now bring your awareness into your low lungs and some low ribs along the front, sides, and back of your body. Breathing into your low lungs and out from your low lungs. Now add on to that as you inhale, fill your low lungs and your mid lungs. So that's that place underneath the armpits. As you exhale, you'll empty mid lungs and then low lungs. Filling up bottom to middle, emptying middle to bottom. Adding on, as you might have guessed, next time you inhale, fill up bottom, middle, tippy tops of lungs, and exhale from the top to the middle to the bottom. The next time you breathe in this three-part way, don't let the chest collapse as you breathe out in this three-part way. Do this once or twice more. If you feel out of breath or dizzy or get a headache, then return to normal breathing right away. And there's no rush. We all breathe at different rates, and you might be breathing slower than normal now. So whenever you're done with your 2 rounds, then return to normal breathing. No effort, no control. These are recovery breaths. Again, this is the practice of pranayama, extending the life force. That's how it translates. And we're going to try one more thing. If you got a headache or you feel dizzy, you're not going to do this, okay? Just regular breathing, rest in your Shavasana. Listen, might be something to try at another time. We will return to that 3-part inhale, but this time we'll pause in between each part. So you inhale the bottom third of the lungs, pause. Inhale the second third of the lungs, pause. Inhale all of the lungs, pause. Hold the breath for a moment. And then you exhale smooth and slow. Okay? So whenever you're ready, I won't guide you through this one. You inhale in 3 parts with a pause in between. And exhale in 1 part, smooth and slow. And just do 1 round of this, then return to normal breathing. This is Baloma 1, pranayama. As long as you didn't have any negative reaction to that breath, you might try 1 more round. Just 1 round at a time and then regular breathing. Now, perhaps by now we're all just breathing regularly. And it is appropriate to rest in Shavasana because pranayama is also work. In Shavasana, we let everything go, all effort. And we simply be. By all means, if you're not comfortable on whatever you're lying on, find something that is comfortable to rest in your Shavasana. Letting space within you and around you become emptier. Letting yourself float in that emptiness. for just a minute or two.